You are a robot, aren't you?
That is correct, sir. For your convenience, I am monitored to respond to the name Robbie.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Klodan Armada.
Yeah.
Get ready. Prepare for blast-off.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mugwump Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Hello and welcome to the Docking Bay 77 podcast. I am your host, Dayton Johnson. We are continuing our exploration of science fiction movies. We've already discussed The Forbidden Planet from 1956. A film that looked at the darkness that hides deep inside us. The film was shot entirely on sets, gave us the first real robot as a character, and took science fiction seriously. Now we travel to 1968 and explore evolution, segregation, class hierarchy, and the plague that is man. Shot on location in the desert of Arizona as well as Southern California, this film launched a franchise that is still going strong. It's time to discuss The Planet of the Apes.
It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
Charlton Heston discovers a world turned upside down. The world he finds out in the galaxy will challenge every idea you've ever had of civilization. A planet where the superior beings are apes. They build the cities, make the laws, the gods, and control the guns that hunt a race of lowly, terrified humans who run wild in the jungles, are caged in the prisons, and stuffed in the museums. 20th Century Fox transforms the motion picture screen into Planet of the Apes, starring Charlton Heston, Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter, and Maurice Evans. Planet of the Apes, beyond your wildest dreams.
I've brought along a couple members of my crew. Please welcome Mike Vermillion. How's it going, Mike?
It's going wonderful. Thank you.
And the always fashionable Robert Burnett. How's it going, Robert?
Very well, thanks. Although I'm still having some regressive ape nightmares from how this scarred me as a child. So thanks for that.
Well, talking about it should help, right?
There you go. This is not a podcast. It's therapy. Okay.
It's therapy. Yes, we've had a few of those in recent months, haven't we?
I'll try not to cry this time.
Okay, well, good. But it's a safe place. If you need to cry, just let me know. It's fine. All right. So, yes, we are talking about The Planet of the Apes from 1968. So, some opening thoughts on this movie. Robert, why don't you start us off?
It was just fantastic. I saw it when I was a little kid. I saw it on TV. It just scared the bejesus out of me. And then at the end, my jaw dropped. I don't know how spoiler-free we want to be about the ending of the movie, but and I was just kind of obsessed with it. And luckily, it was I'm old enough. They were still making ape movies. So, you hot-footed it up to the drugstore, the toy store, and you could find Apes toys and Ape lunchbox and all the things. So I was sort of ape crazy for a couple of years as they were rolling out. One little fun fact. I went to school at UCI, University of California, Irvine. And one of the things it is famous for, they will tell you on the tour, is that they filmed, I think it's the fourth Ape movie, on the newly built campus back in the 70s as an example of one of those hideous futuristic cities that are so gross. They decided that the newly built UC Irvine campus was perfect to represent that. So it's immortalized on film as this horrible ape city that they will still show you the buildings and the balconies and things if you go there now.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. All right. Mike, opening thoughts. And do you remember when and where you saw this for the first time?
So just like Robert, this would have been in the early 70s, around 74, 75. I remember it being on television, and the gorilla apes scared me to death.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes, the militant apes were the ones that really scared me the most. The scientific ones, I was kind of like, these guys are interesting. And then the chimpanzees, I was like, well, they have a human-like aspect. So obviously I gravitated towards them. It was a weird movie to watch. I remember everybody being ape crazy. Like Robert said, there was lunchboxes, board games. I remember comic books. There was Planet of the Apes comic books. And I was like, this is, I didn't know to call it a phenomenon, but back then I was like, it was probably you and I remembering when the Fonz craze hit.
Hey, sorry.
Yay, yeah. So that generation of people bought into it 100%. And that generation, I'm saying, it could have been, Robert's probably a little bit older than me, but the series was still being made in the 70s. And so you had the probably 10-year-olds to 20-somethings that were all just grabbing onto this because it was groundbreaking science fiction, if you ask me.
Right. So I was probably into my teens before I actually saw all of the movies all the way through. And like you guys, I saw them on TV. But I remember when I was living in California, one of our family friends, an older kid, he had the play set from the TV show, that had the trees and the everything. And I was like, oh, this is so cool because, I was aware of the TV show. I remember watching some of the episodes, but I do remember, the t-shirts and I remember stuff like that. And, but yeah, it was one of those that I was aware of. And it was, like I said, it wasn't until I was into the 80s where I think it was like a weekend marathon. Like one of the cable channels was just playing them all. And I sat down and over the course of the weekend, I'd watch them all. And I can tell you honestly that the one that stuck with me the most was the first one, and we'll get into the sequels a little bit later. But, what impresses me when I'm thinking about it now is the themes that were brought to us in 1968 are still relevant now. You know what I mean? It's not like just because it's, 50 years plus later, it still holds up for the most part. I have some minor issues, but for the most part, it still holds up. And that's some pretty good filmmaking when you can take a movie from 1968 and apparently it was good enough for them to, try a reboot. And then now they have some other sequels that we'll get into those later too, but it's still going strong. I mean, I think that's kind of impressive when, something that was based on a book. Now I have a question. Have either of you read the original source material? Because I have not.
Yes.
Okay. I figured Robert probably had. So, was it a good book or, I mean, I know there's a big change. There were some differences, but.
Yeah. It was a fantastic book. Of course, I read it in translation, but very, very good. But I was like 12 when I read it, so I don't know how it would hold up now.
Right.
And I remember my one real impression was just that the ending was amazing because it was different, and I'll talk about that during the production history part.
Right.
But also that it just I was disappointed because it was not the movie. Like I was young enough. I saw the movie and I wanted to read the book that was going to be the movie, and I wasn't quite hip to the whole adapting things and making changes and things that work on screen and don't always work on the page and vice versa. So I was just kind of like, this book's a gyp. This is not planet. This is some rip-off book. It was in fact the real deal.
Nice. All right. Very good. All right. Let's go ahead and move on.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
It's time for That's the Fact, Jack. This is where we discuss facts about the production history and the movie. So, Robert, you have prepared some information for us.
I have. So as we were talking about, it was based on a book, The Planète des Singes by Pierre Boulle, Planet of the Monkeys, and I guess his name would translate as Peter Ball. My Duolingo is paying off. At any rate, he was a very, very prolific French writer, and he took himself very seriously. As a side note, he was a spy during World War II for France in Asia. But anyway, he wrote over 20 novels. His career lasted up until the early 90s. He is remembered today for two things, and not because of his books, but because of the movies that were made out of those books. One was, of course, Planet of the Apes, which we will go into more. The other one, he also wrote Bridge over the River Kwai, which became the movie Bridge on the River Kwai. In both cases, weirdly, the title of the book does not match the title of the movie, because the book is over the River Kwai. The movie is on the River Kwai. I don't know what difference that makes. But anyway, weirdly, he got the Oscar for the screenplay for Bridge on the River Kwai, although he did not write it. In fact, he did not even know English. The screenplay was written by two blacklisted writers from the 1950s. And so to cover it up, they said he was the author of the screenplay. He got the Oscar for it. I picked it up for him. He didn't even know about it till afterward. Later, posthumously, unfortunately, but the two fellows who actually wrote the screenplay for Bridge on the River Kwai got their own Oscars posthumously.
Of course.
One of those fellows, Michael Wilson, I'll get to in a minute, but he also wrote the screenplay for this. So both of Pierre Boulle's film adaptations were written by the same person. But anyway, the book was written in 1963. Boulle did not think of it as science fiction. He called it social fantasy, but of course in French. It was partly inspired by Aldous Huxley's book, Ape and Essence. And Huxley is another novelist who was very serious-minded and wrote lots of books. And weirdly, he also now is known for his dystopian sci-fi Brave New World.
Right.
So both these fellows who thought science fiction was beneath them, it's all they're really known for now. So that's irony. Anyway, and just to keep Disney in the podcast, I couldn't work in Broadway this time unless you count Dr. Zaius from The Simpsons. But I will work in Disney this time. Pierre Boulle also wrote a book about Siam, now Thailand, as we would say, for the Disney series People and Places. That was a film series and a book series in the 1950s. So Boulle, because of his espionage years in what was then Siam, was able to write a book about it for Disney. At any rate, he wanted the book to be in the style of Jules Verne, that kind of fantastical thing. So the book itself actually starts with this couple flying through space, and they receive a message in a bottle. And then in the classic framing device, the message in the bottle is then the book that we proceed to read. The book did have a completely different ending, kind of times two. It had a double twist, which is kind of awesome. So in the book, Ulysses, who is the kind of Charlton Heston surrogate, but called Ulysses because he explores and, like Homer, and Nova, they escaped from the planet of the apes, no pun intended, on a rocket. They're able to get on this rocket because, again, all humans look alike. So they just get on this rocket and go on this test flight that the apes have prepared. They are able to return to Earth. They see the Eiffel Tower because French. They get really excited. They land their rocket. They get out. They're like, "Yay, we're back on Earth. We escaped." And up pull a bunch of jeeps, military jeeps, and out jump gorillas. Bam! Great ending. Then we jump back to that framing device that everybody forgot about because no one remembers. So the couple that are flying around on their little space vacation who found this bottle laugh because they find the whole thing preposterous because it turns out they're actually both chimpanzees. The end. Bam! So double twist. Neither one was in the film. But anyway, the book came to the attention of an agent who was trying to become a producer, Arthur Jacobs. really, this is about the only film he's known for that was successful. He did a bunch of 1970s musicals that all bombed. He did Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which bombed. He did Dr. Dolittle, which, although beloved by me, also bombed. He did not have very good taste in scripts, but he found this one, really wanted to make this movie, worked on it for several years. The earliest writer who really dug deep was Rod Serling,
right,
of Twilight Zone fame. And seeing the finished film, although they didn't use a lot of his dialogue, you can absolutely see some of the stories that Serling was known for are throughout this, whether it's the social commentary or the kind of surprise ending and so on. Serling's version, like the book, set the film in a very, very modern, futuristic thing with flying cars and hovercrafts and all these things. And as Jacobs was struggling to get this made, the budget was being cut to where they said, let's make some stuff out of plaster of Paris and, put it in the 20th Century Fox Ranch, and that'll work. So they brought in a new screenwriter, Michael Wilson, who was one of the same blacklisted fellows who I mentioned, who got his Oscar for Bridge on the River Kwai. Anyway, it took almost 3 years to get this movie from the idea of it onto film. The last little bit I'll tell, and then I'll pass it on to Dayton to talk about the movie itself. But they did do a makeup test with the ape makeup, because it was really, that was the big sticking point, was if people didn't buy the talking apes, the movie was not going to work. Spoiler, the apes talk in the movie. So they did a makeup test with Charlton Heston playing the character. In essence, he would play in the film. Edward G. Robinson was going to be Dr. Zaius, and in fact, he would have been Dr. Zaius if he'd not passed away. The very young James Brolin was another ape. He was kind of the Roddy McDowall character. And then Linda Harrison, who ultimately played Nova, and who coincidentally was the girlfriend of one of the people involved with the film, and who had never acted before, imagine. Anyway, she also played like ape characters. So unfortunately, Robinson and Brolin did not make the final film, and Harrison did, but as a human. But they liked what they saw well enough that they decided to go forward with the movie, and they did. And the rest is the rest of our podcast. Quick plug for physical media. You can find that makeup test on the bonus features of the anniversary disc, and it is 5 minutes long, but it's well worth seeing. And thank goodness they went one more step past what that was, because that was kind of Land of the Lost and not Planet of the Apes. So anyway, that's how we got from 1963 to 1968, and I will turn it over to Dayton now.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, the Tim Burton 2001 remake had that similar ending for the Pierre Bol book, with him landing in the United States and the cars pull up and they're all apes. So at least we got part of that. That's kind of where I'll end with that version of the movie. But anyway, so yes, some facts about the movie. It premiered at the Capitol Theater in New York City on February 8th, 1968. Went wide release April 3rd of the same year. Music by the great Jerry Goldsmith, who flashback to our top 7 movie scores episode. He's come up quite a bit. Runtime of 112 minutes. Budget was $5.8 million, which by today's standards is absolutely nothing. Box office was $33.3 million, so it did very well. It got Oscar nominations for Best Costume Design and Best Original Score. In 2001, it was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. As we mentioned earlier, its success spawned a franchise originally of 4 sequels, the TV series, an animated series, and lots of toys and comic books. And as I mentioned, the 2001 Tim Burton remake, which does have some good things about it, but overall kind of went And in 2011, the franchise was rebooted to box office and critical success with yet another film on the way, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and I am excited because I do love those versions. A couple other notes I came across, which I thought was fascinating. Ingrid Bergman turned down the part of Zira, and later confided in her daughter, Isabella Rossellini, that it was one of her biggest regrets. She saw the movie and was kind of upset that she wasn't in it, and also missed out on a chance to work with Charlton Heston. In the original script, all the female natives were bare-chested. Fox nixed that idea because they wanted to appease the censors. I'm like, that's a completely different movie, but whatever. Kim Hunter, who played Zira, found the facial ape prosthetics so claustrophobic that she had to take a Valium each morning before putting the makeup on. Charlton Heston and Linda Harrison, who played Nova, as you said, both appear in the 2001 remake. The see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil gag was actually that day of on-set ad lib by the actors. And it was left in because, quite frankly, I think everybody loved it. Just, why not? It's such a serious movie, and then right in the middle of it, you just kind of get this gag. So I absolutely loved it. All right, let's move on.
That was totally wicked!
It's time for That Was Totally Wicked. These are things that we love about the movie. Mike, why don't you start us off? What's something you love about the movie?
It blows my mind as to how relevant the social commentary is still on cue.
Yes, absolutely.
So, in the face of normal convention of the 60s, this movie, and the cool thing about it is, I think people who would have been offended by it didn't get it because it was above their head.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, 100%. No, I get it.
Those who would have been like, oh, this is bullcrap. Women aren't scientists, and there's no hierarchy and all this. I mean, yeah, it just went right over their head, and they were into the science fiction aspect of it or something like that. But yeah, that to me is what sticks out with this movie. Is it's groundbreaking even to today's standards.
Yeah, and like the little things like using the fire hose on them in the cages. I mean, you saw that, so it was so typical and prevalent in the 60s during the race riots and everything, and the marches and everything, and the cops just unloading them. So you have that. You have little, there's that line that Taylor uses right after they see the natives that are eating, and he says, if this is the best they have, we'll be running this planet in 6 months, which says a lot about the humans' need to conquer and expand. I'm like, there's, and then at the end of the movie, when they read from the scroll about how man, will wipe out everything and they will, kill each other and everything else. I'm like, man, you're right. Because it's in a sci-fi setting, some people that should be paying attention didn't get it, but it is all over this movie. And that, yes, 100%. That's one of the things that is so great about it. And and I think at this time, like the 60s and into the early 70s, was a prime time for something like this to be made. So yeah, very good call. As you can see, I completely agree with you. Robert, something you love about the movie?
Well, I'll pile on that for a minute, but I do have something else to talk about. But the thing that jumped for me this time, and it's always been so relevant in so many ways, but was when Zaius toward the end has his little speech. I don't remember the exact line, but he says something about, well, yeah, I'm in charge of science and I'm in charge of faith because, I can make them be the same thing.
Right.
It was like, oh, dear God. Like, I think he's a senator in a southern state right now. I mean, I don't know. I was just... This viewing jumped out as, wow, still relevant. Anyway, no, the two things I liked about it beyond that, I loved the production design, and I'm so glad they decided to go cheap, because that Ape City and those cages and all that freeform stuff is so cool looking. Even as a kid, I just thought it was so visually interesting to see. So, and even the costume design along with that, I was noticing this time. And then I had it confirmed watching a bonus. Even the apes' costumes, they almost all have some kind of foreshortened sleeve, where the sleeve doesn't go all the way down and there's like a little vest over it or a tunic, with the idea that it subconsciously makes all the apes' arms look really long. Whether they're chimps or gorillas or orangutans, their arms look a little bit disproportionately long because they all have these weird like elbow length and forearm length sleeves. And anyway, so costumes and sets both. It's gorgeous to look at. I totally bought the whole future city and all that. A little skeptical, don't know quite how that the rifles work in. But anyway, and then of course the other thing I was going to mention you touched on was the amazing score by Jerry Goldsmith. Holy cow. He has done Victorian music, he has done scary music, and apparently he can do ape music, because especially this watching, I was really listening for his music, and it is so cool. And so many things in the 60s and 70s, I'm thinking especially of like Twilight Zone episodes and some of Outer Limits and some of those weird things, just use this sort of stupid as percussion bingity bong, bells and noises and wood blocks that conveyed nothing. They just were, I guess, modern and hip, but they were just kind of pointless. And this is mood setting and creepy and exciting when it needs to be, and did a really great score again from Jerry Goldsmith. So that was something else I love about the film.
Yeah, the piece of music that plays when Taylor first gets a look at the ape faces on the horseback. That piece right there is so, I mean, it's burned into my brain, because I remember before I watched this again, I always think of that scene when the ape turns around and they zoom in on that one face and that music that's playing. It's just like, it's disturbing, which goes along with the realization that what we're seeing. And 100%. There's some of it. There's a few pieces that are kind of not as great, but for the most part, it's really, really good. So yeah, it definitely helps with the mood of the movie for sure. I do want to take a minute and talk about the faces, the ape prosthetics, because and later when they got even cheaper in the sequels, they literally just put store-bought masks on people. But these are so good for late 60s. When Zira's talking, and especially her, it's like when she scrunches up her face and stuff like that, you can see emotions, on these masks. And I'm like, man, that's super impressive for 1967. You know what I mean? And for them to be able to pull that off, and for you to, because there's plenty of times where I felt like there was more expression in the ape faces than there were on the humans. So it's just like, wow, that looks really good. So,
well, I was going to say, I totally bought it even on this viewing, even with all our CG advances. And one thing that makes me crazy when I see modern day CG films of aliens or whatever it can be is their mouths move too damn much. It's just like these rippling lips and tongues, and it's just like no one looks like that when they talk. And I actually felt that this actually was, to me, I bought into it. I never went, oh, bad effects, bad. I believed it. Whereas some of the more modern day stuff, they're overcompensating and it's not as credible.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good statement on modern filmmaking, if you ask me.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true. As you mentioned, the production design, I love that they shot the opening, when they crash in the lake and everything. I love that was shot in Arizona, in Lake Powell, and because that to me needed to look like it was in the middle of nowhere. I kind of feel like at that point on a set, I mean, the Ape City works, when they do stuff like that, but the vastness of the canyon and everything had to work to really kind of make us believe that they were in the middle of nowhere. And the shots when it tracks past the sinking ship in the lake are really fantastic and really give you that sense of, well, they're screwed. So yeah, I dig it. So, all right.
How many sci-fi movies of that generation they landed on these desolate planets? And so for the first time viewer, we had the luxury of seeing it on TV and realizing that there's going to be a culture of apes. But for somebody in 1968 watching this first time is used to watching these rocket ships landing on desolate planets and stuff like that. And then, they struggle for water and they're trying to find food, which is what was going on. But then all of a sudden it takes this giant turn and the planet's ran by monkeys. What the hell? It's so imagine being privy to that for the very first time.
Yeah. Yeah. This is definitely one of those movies because you can't hide from the twist ending. I mean, you mentioned The Simpsons earlier, Robert. I mean, that's a great episode when they make a musical out of Planet of the Apes. So, and the ending has been made onto AFI's lists, and the line, "Get your paws off me, damn dirty apes," made list. So it's kind of hard at this point to not know the twist ending. But I would give anything to have been one of the first people to see this in the theater, and the reaction, just everything was, God, what a moment that would have been. So,
well, see, little, however-year-old Bobby, his cried his eyes off and screamed and ran out of the room because I was like, what? Because I had no idea, I mean, it was, I don't know, Mike, if you had the same experience, but yeah, we were not sunk into it to where it was just a trope. It was shocking.
Yeah.
It shocked me because the Statue of Liberty stood for America and all that stuff, and to see the statue in this state of worn down and broken and all this other stuff. That scared me more than the fact I didn't understand nuclear holocaust. So I didn't realize that the statue survived a nuclear war, and that's why the planet was scorched and all this other stuff. Because again, 6 years old, you just don't understand these concepts. And I was like, so they destroyed the Statue of Liberty. That's what really scarred me.
See, my problem was I'd seen it, I'd heard too much about it when I saw it, in the 80s. I kind of knew about the ending and stuff like that, but it's still a great movie. Still really has a lot to say. All right. Anything else to say before we move on?
I just, going back, I remember some documentaries about this, and the set designs, the illustrations that they storyboarded in the beginning, they stuck to. And I think Robert was 100% correct. It made this believable because the set is primitive, but yet livable. And I look at it as like, I could see monkeys building this, or apes,
right.
As far as, and the only thing that kind of bothered me a little bit, where did they get the gun technology?
Yeah. See, we're going to get to that in just a minute.
Right. Exactly. I didn't. I knew it. I knew he was going to hit on that for a little bit, but yeah, I'm just so happy that there are some things when they were getting ready to produce this, they stuck to their guns on the set and the costumes and certain things. And it made it for what it is. It's an exceptional movie. Yeah.
I do love the very different outfits for everybody's jobs. Like, you have the chimps have their look, and you have the leader, the keepers of the faith and the science, and they have their look. And as you mentioned, the apes, the gorillas, and their very dark and menacing costumes. The details in that are fantastic. So yeah, absolutely love the extra mile they went in making everybody look very, very good. So
I was taken aback for a minute this time because I so remembered the big head thing that General Urko, I think it was, wore. And I was like, where's my hat? Like it was, and I did not introduced in this one. I guess it comes later. But
right.
In my mind, I had blurred it all together into one big ape movie. And I was just like, they kept showing the apes, the gorillas. And I was like,
where's their
the
helmets?
Hat? Like, yeah. But
I remember, I had the same, I was like, wait a second. That was 2 or 3 movies down the road before they went, and the different actors playing different generals and all that good stuff. But back to the costumes. One thing I was trying to figure out, even as a kid, they all had like these leather plates and with symbols. And I wondered if it was something to do with their name and or perhaps their title. I don't know if it was ever discussed or brought up, but they don't have the exact same. Yeah. Robert, what did you think?
I noticed that too. And I was wondering this time, it didn't really occur to me on other viewings, but if it was like a rank, because they are so hierarchical, even among the gorillas, even among the different species of simians. And so I was almost wondering if it was almost like a ranking, like Zira is a high class chimp and somebody else with a different symbol. And so maybe it gives you access to different things, or because they don't really have doors, or any of that. So maybe I don't know, but it was a great detail because it made me feel like there was a culture and a life to this planet that existed and was real. And I didn't have it explained to me, but it's just like going to a real foreign country where you can't always read the signs, but you figure that must mean something to somebody. So I liked it.
Yeah. Yes, you nailed it. It must mean something to somebody. I don't know what it was, but it did mean something to the apes.
No, I do love the hierarchy that's in there, because there's that line, and it goes to that time period here too, where when we first meet Zira and the doctor in there, and he's like, what do you mean they got rid of the quotas, system? And I'm thinking, oh wow, that's just, because like he's like, well, you made it. He's like, I didn't make it. I'm just a scientist. I'm not even, they don't take me seriously. And so I just thought that was kind of a nice little shot at the system that we know of.
Yep.
So
yep. I like the part though, since you touched on it, that Zira could be a strong and educated female in this, which was starting that iceberg was starting to melt away, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Although weirdly, I think she's the only speaking female ape in the movie.
She is.
I had noticed that. Wow, yeah.
Yeah. She is, yeah, and well, you hear them scream when Taylor's running around.
Oh yeah, there's the mom. Yeah, there's the mom of the little chimp who he sees at the
Yeah.
I guess there's her, but yeah. So
yeah, there's it. That's it. But yeah, that makes sense. That works too. All right, let's move on.
No, sir, I didn't like it.
Time for no, sir, I didn't like it. These are things that we don't like or don't work about the movie. So, Mike, why don't you start us off?
People might get, but Charlton Heston came off as flat.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we're going to be in agreement here. It's a trifecta. He's on my list too. Yep.
Okay, well,
oh my.
And one of the things I wish they would have built up, instead of him pontificating on man's role when he was in the spaceship, the female they briefly touched on was going to be the Eve to help repopulate the planet with Charlton. And I think that would have been a really more interesting thing if they would have built that up in the beginning before her death, because I mean, she's irrelevant totally until he just makes this one little blurb about, and I can't remember her name, but he was like, her and I were supposed to be the ones who repopulate this planet.
Stewart. That was her name. Stewart.
Yes. Thank you. And I was like, man, why that's a whole nice little thing that they could have elaborated on a little bit more than him smoking a cigar in a spaceship that's highly oxygenated.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll stop there and let you guys go on what bothered you guys.
Well, I'm quickly. Yeah. I was trying to debate whether it was just Heston's delivery or was just the dialogue that was written for him. But yeah, there was some of his lines and some of his deliveries that bothered me. Like there's a scene where he's kind of giving Landon a hard time, and he asks him a question, but then says, "No, never mind. I'm going to answer it for you." And he kind of goes on this whole thing about, you wanted to live forever and all this other stuff. And there's like no pause. There's no, he doesn't let the lines sit there. He just keeps talking and keeps talking and you're just like, give it a chance to resonate. Let something, I don't know. He just, to be honest, the best part of the movie for him was when he couldn't talk,
Yes.
And that's it. Yeah. I just kind of felt that he at times was, I know the character is supposed to be kind of an ass, but I don't know. Anyway, but yes, I will agree with that. So we all in agreement on Heston. So there we go. Okay. So Robert, something you don't like about the movie.
Charlton Heston for 3. Yeah, no. I think to your point, Dayton, I think part of it is the character is written because his character does not have a lot of charm or humor, but I think a different actor could have found that. And the thing for me about Heston, especially in this movie, but really in all his movies, is he's a horrible, horrible actor, according to me. It's just all it is like clenched teeth and screaming. He's just like shouting everything in his teeth. It's just like, oh my God, you can't read every line the same way. But apparently he does. He just shouts through his clenched teeth every line he has, and there's no nuance. There's nothing about the character that is likable, but that he could have found even with the script. But yeah, what's weird to me is looking over his career. I mean, the man worked for like 50 years in films. He did Shakespearean films. He did other classics. He must have had something going on that worked for him. But in this movie, he is just absolutely the worst. I mean, he almost. It's just such a dated one-note performance. It almost sinks the whole movie, unfortunately. But to Mike's point, fortunately, most of the time he doesn't talk, so yay. But yeah, I don't know who they could have got instead with that masculine, virile thing in that era. It was too soon for like a Burt Reynolds and Paul Newman would never have thought about it. But I don't know who they could have gotten instead. But I
would have loved to have seen Steve McQueen. I could roll with that.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think he would have done it either. But
he probably wouldn't have, but I think that would have been a good. He could have made it. He has that charm, and that, I mean, that Heston just doesn't have.
Yeah, and Heston doesn't even seem that smart. I mean, he did his, at least his portrayal. He just seems
Right.
like this kind of bullying loudmouth, and just not a fan. But
Yeah.
I think, though, to some extent, they had to have that big name.
Well, yeah, I agree.
He was that big name. So
Yeah.
even though I think that it could have been cast better, they were doing the bankable cast.
No, I agree.
But the director could have, like, beat him with a stick a little bit and told him.
I agree. Okay, yeah.
He just like shouts everything and over emotes. I mean, the ending is, to me, almost becomes laughable because the visual is so effective. And then you have Charlton screaming and pounding the sand and flying and yelling and what have you done? It's like, oh, stop! And it becomes almost laughable because he's just too much all the time.
Yeah, I agree.
But God love him, in the 1950s, running around with like no clothes for most of the movie. Very, very daring. I mean, for the 60s and for a male actor versus a female actress, it was like, wow, there's a lot of butt in this movie. Which today a lot.
There's lots it's for a G rating. There's lots of butt and some you have damn a couple of times in there too. So it's like that was surprising.
And there aren't a lot of actors today, I think, who are going to drop trow like that. But Heston didn't care. I mean, that one scene in the courtroom is like whip off his clothes. It's like, okay,
I know,
that's
right?
Gratuitous and weird, but okay. Anyway, yeah, Charlton, no. No. Let's move on. We like this movie, right? So.
But yes, no, and that's the thing. I have quite a few little things that caught me. So when the crew's making their way across the desert, and Heston is giving Landon a hard time, the other guy, I forget his name right now, he yells, Skipper, come here. And he's up on top of that hill. So the other two guys run up and meet him, and he's running down the other side. And then they find this tiny plant. I'm like, there's no way that dude saw that plant from 200 feet away, And then I'm like, okay, fine, I forgive that. But then they dig it up. What are you doing with this? They gather around and they dig it up, and they are like, why are you going to replant it? I mean, what's the point here? Because then when you come to it later, they don't have it anymore. So I just don't like, I'm like, what was at least make it visible. I saw this, or like stumble across it or something. It just seemed like
that jumped for me too. And all I could actually rewatch that part of it, was that I think in a better director's hands, maybe when they all three were digging up underneath it and lifting it out of the ground, it was some kind of like moment, like, look, there is life, there is hope, that we will live. But then, like, they just rip it out of the ground, and then Heston like tosses it aside 50 yards later. So
yeah,
but that was all I could think they were trying to show, was that it was some kind of powerful moment for these men to practically worship this little twig, because it gave them hope. Now I don't know, I'm reaching, but it was all I could come up with.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Robert. That's what I took from it. But I'm like, Dayton, it was so weird. And then they had to dig it up and kill it. And I'm like,
I know, because you literally just killed this plant by
the only one
that
they found, and maybe it was the last of its species. And the scene came off weird. But I get what they were trying to say. And I think Robert nailed it. It was the three of them coming together and realizing, oh, we are on this together, but there's hope for the three of us. And,
there's a chance. Yeah. Yes. I can dig that, but the delivery was not very good.
There's also some foreshadowing there too. And I will talk about this in a minute when I talk about my favorite scene, but the one scientist whose name we can't remember, poor fella. Well, he dies first, right? So he
gets shot, and we later see him in the museum. So
So astronaut expendable. He says, well, where there's one, there's more.
Yes.
And that line comes up later in the film.
Yes, it does.
So there's a lot of foreshadowing in the opening sequence, and that popped for sure. This idea of, oh, there's one, there's going to be more, and in fact, that we'll see that happen later.
Right. So, I also kind of feel at the beginning, we're discussing the whole section where they're wandering the desert. it's supposed to be 3 days because that's when the groceries run out, 72 hours. And we see them walking along, but I never kind of feel like they've been walking for 3 days. You know what I mean? We have that one night. I guess it's supposed to be night with the thunder and the lightning and there's no rain, but there were some choices made where they just keep walking fine. And the only reason we know that it's been 3 days is because they do the water check and they're down to 8 ounces, which means they've been drinking most of their water. Their food's probably all gone or whatever. But I didn't feel like it was a very long time. They didn't communicate, which I know is, like I said, minor complaint, but I kind of feel like if you were been struggling in the desert, for 3 days, you should look a little bit more ragged, or we should feel like it's been 3 days. And I just don't think they did that. So
they could have done one scene where they're building a fire and dealing with the frigid temperatures of a desert versus the really hot daytime temperatures. And that would have broke that up a little bit. I agree with you. That would have made a nice little, this isn't just them walking around for 6 hours. This is them walking around for 3 days.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's like I said, little things like some of the action sequences go on too long, like Taylor's escape attempt.
Yep.
Just it's like 10 minutes long. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's taking his time. He goes to a funeral. He goes to the museum. He's getting pelted by fruits and vegetables. I'm like, just catch the guy.
Well, see, it's funny. I would disagree a little bit, only because this movie also has a lot of really long, almost static camera talky scenes talking about the different philosophies and the different things. So I think to give the movie a little balance, I mean, yeah, they are kind of long-ish, but they make a nice balance toward the kind of like, let's be in one room and have a debate for 10 minutes, scenes, so that, whether you're intellectual or you're the little kid who wants action scenes, you get something from this movie, but in balance.
Right. Okay. That's fair. Now I know Mike mentioned it earlier, the guns. So, okay. So, I like video games, and I've played enough Civilization based video games to know that certain inventions have to follow certain inventions. And granted, the gun, it's not like they're, automatic weapons or whatever, but if you compare the guns they have to everything else they have, it seems like a leap of faith. And also, where are they being made? We don't see any kind of industry. We have medicine. We have, they can do a transfusion or whatever. But if they do that wide shot of the village, I'm like, this is small. This is not very many. I mean, this is like maybe 100 apes. And I'm thinking, where's everybody else? Where's, it just, I know it was budget and I get that. I mean, yes, it looks great, but my question is, where's the rest of them? It just kind of felt like small, and I don't know. It's kind of silly, but where'd that stuff come from?
I agree.
They don't have lights. They don't have, they have leather. They have these, great outfits, but I'm just saying there seems, my brain goes, well, it's the Old West. It's the Old West. I'm like, that's fine, but the rifles didn't look that cool in the Old West. You know what I mean? They weren't that was a minor complaint, but still, it's the question I ask myself every time I watch it. I go, I mean, so part of me is like, maybe they found the scientists found the stuff and they bury the evidence later. They just kind of extrapolate from what they found. I don't know. It's just it's a annoying question I have every time I watch it.
I agree. I'm going to push back though and say that I think you're on the right track. I will forgive them that, but if you look at like the only really industrial age stuff they have are like these wagons, these kind of horse and buggy wagons, and they have the guns. Both of those things theoretically could have been in the caves or somewhere else, because Zaius apparently knows a whole lot more than he lets on about the prehistory of the ape civilization. And I mean, so I'm wondering if some of these things, because they are metal, would have lasted. I mean, if that damn doll hair can last 3,000 years, I'm sure that a rifle could. But that still begs the question, well, great, but where are they getting like the gunpowder and the bullets? So yeah, I mean, it better not to look too close, but
I know.
but I mean, electricity is hard to figure out with nothing, but
Right.
if you saw a gun laying on the ground and if it was still loaded all those years later, you would get it to fire once and you might be able to figure out how to get it to fire again. I don't know.
Yeah.
But because everything else they wouldn't have had necessarily prototypes of, if that makes sense. Because so I don't know. It's a stretch, but
yeah,
I'm usually the one who does not forgive that kind of thing. But in this movie, I thought it was fine.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't ruin. It obviously doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it's just that little bit of a question. I'm like, well, where'd they get it? So anyway.
I mean, the bigger question is the apes have the gorillas have those fantastic nets, and apparently they are incapable of catching anyone in a net.
Yes.
Because like every single time we see those nets swoop down, the people are just like meh, and they take the net off and they walk away. And the two of the apes get it caught on a damn boulder and like throw themselves off their horses. So I mean, if you can't believe they can even work a net, I guess you can go with, sure, they have guns. Why not?
Yeah. Oh, all right. I love it. Okay. Any other complaints, any other things that don't work you guys want to mention?
The spaceship, when they go into hibernation and then when they wake up, what caused it to have that extra like 2,000 years that bothered me? Because like when they're landing and he goes back and looks at the clock, it's like 2,000 years ahead of where it should be.
Right.
And I'm like, that just bothered me a little bit. I was like,
that was Earth time and not space time, like his, but my guess is, I want to say it was bad programming. Maybe the autopilot messed up, if there was a nuclear war, maybe that threw something off. I don't know. Maybe couldn't communicate. Yeah, I know. It's one of those things like, and it's so funny. They kind of play down Stewart's death. Like, oh, she died. She's been dead for a year, whatever. But so something obviously happened. What it was, I don't know. Right. I just kind of chalked it up to it was a computer error.
Sure.
Because they even said we weren't programmed to land in the water. I'm like going, where were you programmed to land then? You know?
Yeah.
And then later Taylor says, he guesses where they are, and near Orion or whatever I'm thinking. And then later he says, well, I told you when we are and where we are. It's like, you don't know where you are. You literally don't.
Well, the guy calls him out on that.
Yes.
But Heston has to be Heston and be right and shout. So,
And his laugh when he looks at that flag that Landon puts.
Oh, man.
Bad. So bad.
Yeah. If I didn't already know I loved this movie, that would have been the point where I would have just turned it off if this was a first viewing of the film,
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, we do like this movie. It's just there's just a lot of little things that you're kind of like, what? Could have been made better choices. All right, so before we move on to Smiling's My Favorite, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our friends at the All 80s Movies podcast.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we are finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
You can find the All 80s Movies podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe and happy listening.
Why are you smiling like that?
I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite.
Make work your favorite. That's your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Work is your new favorite.
Fine.
All right. It's time for Smiling is My Favorite. These are some of our favorite things from the movie and some other stuff. So, Robert, do you have a favorite scene?
Yes. My favorite scene is the opening sequence. And I watched it twice, once straight through and then wanted to see that scene. And I don't know if you could do something like that in a movie nowadays. I mean, so the opening sequence is almost half an hour of the film, of a not quite 2 hour film. And nowadays there'd be like a pre-credits 3-minute sequence with a big scary crash and then some credits and then boom, apes. And I just thought it was kind of stunning and remarkable that it went on and on and on. And I thought it was so great. The gradual reveals, first with those scary scarecrows that had that fantastic black and red fur on them, which I thought was a great touch. Even when we finally see the apes for the first time, they don't speak for almost 10 minutes. So we see these gorillas grabbing people and messing up their nets and doing all this stuff. And they still don't. And so it's just wonderful, just like build up and build up and build up. But which it made the tension great. It made it really atmospheric. But I liked the walking through the desert sequence a lot, and I liked it because even despite some of the silly camera work where the camera turned sideways and this and that, but it was disorienting. And I think to your point, Dayton, the location was fantastic because
yes, it was.
They were able to pull back and show these little specks going through a giant ravine. And now they're on top of a cliff overlooking, 200 more miles. And I'm sure some of it was matte paintings, but it looked desolate and strange and not of this world. How nervy was it to go? Like I said, a half an hour into this, they crash, and then like a half hour later, something happens.
Yeah.
And for half an hour, these three dudes are just talking and arguing and digging up shrubs and doing whatever else. And I liked, in a way, they did not show an evening per se, just because it was just almost more disconcerting. Because it was just, and I mean, they could have been a little more sweaty, maybe been dragging their feet a little bit, but it made it kind of surreal. Like, my God, is this ever going to end? They just keep walking, and then we keep pulling the camera back, and there's these specks again, and then they just keep walking and arguing. And I thought it was a great way to start the movie, and then the slow reveal of first the scarecrows, and then the figures, and then there are people, and then there's apes, and then the apes talk. It just kept amping up to where with Jerry Goldsmith's wonderful music, that it set such a great tone. And I said it was really nervy. I feel like I get Rod Sterling's hand, at least in a lot of that part, because it was the kind of storytelling he liked, where it's like, hey, let's do an action movie and a sci-fi movie with like almost no dialogue for half an hour. That'll work, and it worked. And what I also enjoyed a lot this time was how much foreshadowing, and I mentioned it before, but how much foreshadowing there is in that opening sequence. Because at one point, after Heston's character is going on about, oh, we're in the constellation of this, and we're by this star and this and that, and the guy is like, well, you don't even know what you're talking about. That's a guess. Heston says, well, I don't know. I think what's not important is where we are, but when we are.
Yeah, that's
foreshadowing.
True. Yeah.
And then even his remark, as you mentioned earlier too, about, we're going to own this planet. Again, the human greed and power is like what leads to the downfall. I mean, There were so many things, and there's even a little joke about, somebody says something with the fellas about, just fell out of the tree. I didn't just fall out of the tree, which is clearly like a monkey reference. And it was just so great. There were so many little references and seeds planted, no pun intended there, but that later phrases that came back, or things that came back, or that once you know where they are and what's happening, you're like, oh, so, and especially the line when Heston says, well, it doesn't matter, where we are. The important thing is when we are. And it's like, Yes, indeed, because we'll find that out another 100 minutes from now. So I thought that just the whole opening sequence, it was nervy, it was cinematic, the beautiful use of the location and Goldsmith's music. And some of the pontificating was a little much, but it did set in motion a lot of the themes and ideas that later we would see played out through the rest of the film. So it was a nice kind of extended overture to the actual cool part with the monkeys.
Yeah. See, there's two things I want to mention about that. I love that as they're getting closer to greenery, And around the same time that they see the scarecrows, we start to see the natives popping up
Yes.
here and there. It's like they're, if you're not paying attention, you miss them. Like there's a couple times like, wait, did I see something? And so I really liked that. I love that when they're at the cave at the end and Dr. Zaius is like, well, what happened to the humans if they were so good? And he goes, well, I don't know, maybe a natural plague. And I'm like, yep, the plague was man that destroyed man. So there's so many, at times there's such brilliant writing, which is why I get so frustrated with a lot of the dialogue that Heston delivers. It's kind of like there's so many great things in here. I'm like, but yet the dialogue at times is kind of clunky. So, but anyway, but yes, no, I agree with most of what you said about the opening. But yeah, it's the foreshadowing is great. I agree with that. All right, Mike, favorite scene?
Location. So there's so many scenes that are kind of my favorite just because I don't know who went out and found these locations. I don't know who was setting up the cinematography and the angles and stuff like that, but so many of them. And again, like Robert's saying, walking through the desert, I'm like, this is really good cinema. This is some great capturing of film, showing emotion, even though it's just three guys walking. You're feeling something versus just three guys walking through the desert, with the horse with no name or whatever. I mean,
I love it.
So yeah, I just, this whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm like really taken back by the cinematography and how they use the scenery as it was important.
Right.
Every location was thought out. And I love that about this movie. It wasn't just haphazardly done. Like they did about the fourth movie where they end up in Robert's alma mater.
Yes, this is what hell looks like.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Mike, but is there a favorite section or something that stands, like certain scene that sticks out to you, or?
Finally, when he yells and he communicates to Zero, I started liking that build up. I like that.
Okay.
Because again, it's been drug out and going, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, now this is coming together and it's starting to come out and we're getting somewhere. We're in the meat of this. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I liked a lot.
All right. So I really, even though I think it kind of starts to go on a little long, I love the hunt with the awesome, first of all, the horrible sound that sends all the natives running.
Mm-hmm.
And then the slow reveal, them smacking the crops to drive them a certain direction. And then you see the gunshots, you see the guns, you see the horses, but you don't see their faces, and they run past you. And like I said, that reaction of Taylor seeing the gorillas on horseback is great. You lose a couple people here, and yeah, they're kind of clunky with the nets, but it kind of shows you, instantly like, well, we're on the bottom of the food chain in this situation. We're definitely not, in a good situation. And then when they end, and to Robert's point, there's no talking. The apes don't say anything until the one guy says smile when he takes a picture, with the guys with their prizes. Mm. And I love that because it's so, pointing a big old finger at those sport hunters, you know what I mean? Amen. And I love that. I was like, that's so good. So yeah, I enjoy the hunt section very much because it's that reveal, that music, the tension, people trying to get away. And yeah, it's very, very cool. And that, like I said, that image of the zoom in on the gorilla and that music burned into my brain. So
it scared me as a child. That scene really rocked my world. And I remember watching it as a child and trying to process, are they trying to capture or kill or both, or what is their mission with these humans? I mean, they're driving them out of the crops at first, and all of a sudden then they're trying to catch them, and then they're shooting them. And I was like, what is this chaos of, it's like, what are they doing? And like you said, oh, we're at the bottom of the food chain now.
It's like, well, they're doing both. They're trying to keep them from reproducing, and then they bring them so they can test, apparently do surgery on their brains. So that's what Zero does.
It's sport. Part of it is sport, I think.
Yeah.
There's that also, I did not remember it at all till this time, but that creepy shot when they get down the edge of the village, there's I don't know, 5 or 6 humans hanging by their ankles on this kind of rack. That just made my flesh crawl this time. I don't know if I just never noticed it before or not, but I was like, oh dear God. So it was, I think it was sport. I think it was for slaves. I don't know what it was, but it was just horrific. But yeah.
Yes.
Powerful stuff.
Yes. All right. Favorite character, Robert.
Well, let's go the other way with the apes from these horrible ones. Zero was my favorite by far. Now,
mine too.
I am a huge fan of Roddy McDowall, and if I drink enough, I do a great Roddy McDowall impersonation. But
I got to hear that sometime.
Some other time. But I always loved his career. He's a very odd actor, but in this movie, it's not his role. I think it is Zero's movie for sure. Even though he was second billed, but Kim Hunter is fantastic. The expressions she makes, just the warmth in her eyes is so lovely. I mean, to do like that kind of eye acting, I mean, that was good stuff. And her character is nice because she is kind of the voice of reason in a lot of ways. But she is not a know-it-all. She's not that like lady in the smock with the clipboard who has all the answers and tells the audience what they need to know. She's not sure either,
right?
Which is a great point of entry for us into like, well, what is going to happen? What's going on? And she's very warm and she's kind and I just think to do that amazing job of giving you all these feelings and emotions under that much latex, really amazing stuff. I mean, Bergman would have been interesting, but I don't know if a Swedish chimp would have made sense in this context. But but yeah, so pretty much every scene with Zero I liked, and I'd forgotten because I haven't seen this film in so many years how kind of inconsequential Roddy McDowall's character is. I think as he was in so many of the movies and so many roles, I thought, well, it's going to be like his picture. It's going to be like him and Heston, and it's like, oh, he kind of off to the side and kind of an idiot, but means well. But no, I'm Team Zero all the way.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with everything you said about Zero because she was my favorite too. So, Mike, your favorite character?
I just got to rubber stamp what Robert said. I mean, geez, man, I'm like you. I remember the other sequels that came out, and Roddy McDowall was such a pivotal character in those that I just was waiting for him to be like, when is his character going to open up and show us some stuff? Yeah, and he never did. And then Zero is this glimmer of hope that there's a possibility that the apes and the humans might be able to exist together. She's compassionate and the acting with their eyes and their emotions that they could get through the latex. Even Dr. Zaius, when he was frowning and squinting his eyes down and stuff like that. I mean, all the acting is just great, but her character, she shined. So, I rubber stamp everything Robert said. I can't really pile any more onto it.
Yeah. I love at the end when, Taylor's like, Dr. or Zero, I'd like to kiss you goodbye. And she's like, okay, but you're so damn ugly. The way she delivers that line is just fantastic. It's like, and then her reaction to it's like, you can tell there's a little bit of like, well, I kind of enjoyed that. And then she kind of shakes it off. So yeah, 100%. She killed that role. She was fantastic. So
I gotta say, just for acting, Morris Evans as Zaius was really good though.
Oh
his character is not likable, but my gosh, his acting was fantastic as well. Yeah. Really much more nuanced than it had to be to play the bad guy. So that he was amazing, and to the point about the faces and the movement. On one of the bonus features, they were talking about the makeup and the appliances, and I think it was McDowall who figured out early on that they pretty much had to continually move their face, always be doing something, and to do everything in an exaggerated way. So they would open their mouths very wide, and they would scrunch their forehead, and they would bug their eyes and whatever, and through the masks and through the appliances, it conveyed better. So Kim Hunter in some old footage said the same thing, that she said when they first would just kind of talk and act like they would act normally, it just looked like a rubber mask. It was immobile in essence, and this idea of really working your chin and your jaw and your cheeks gave life to all the characters in a way that the later films don't get because of the slip-on Halloween masks.
Yes.
But much as I don't like Dr. Zaius, but gosh, Morris Evans did a great job with that part.
Amen. Yeah.
I agree. All right. This might be tough for some of us, but favorite Charlton Heston movie, Robert?
Well, I'm going to be flip and say Hercules because he only narrates that one, and you don't get to see.
He does. He narrates in Armageddon as well, so that's another choice.
You don't see him, but honestly, I thought he was. If you have to see him in a movie, I guess I would say probably 3 and 4 Musketeers.
Oh, okay.
I like those movies a lot. He has a smallish part. He kind of a one-dimensional villain anyway, so it suits him, and he's still doesn't have a sense of humor, but in his very funny movies that he's in, but he does a good job with the Cardinal in the 3 and 4 Musketeers. So I'll give him that.
Okay. All right. Mike?
I'm gonna kind of pull a stinker out real quick. I liked when he played in Tombstone.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I really just like that movie in general. But then honestly, a true Charlton Heston movie, my one that comes to mind has been her.
All right. Yeah, that's a good choice. I haven't seen that in years, but I have seen it. So
yeah. It's. I might go back and now look at it and be like, this is terrible.
No, I still think it's a very epic film, but I mean, it's definitely well made. But yeah, and I think it's good in spite of him. You know what I mean? And and that's my pick is kind of the same idea. Flashback to our top 7 movies of the golden age of cinema. My choice is A Touch of Evil, which Heston was in, but that's all Orson Welles, his genius as a filmmaker, because I love friggin' great movie. But it's my second choice was going to be True Lies because he's only on screen for like 2 minutes. So, but no.
So we kind of got that same angle. It's like a cameo appearance.
Yeah. Well, with Touch of Evil, like I said, it's great because of the filmmaker. It's a great movie, and he didn't make it bad. So anyway. All right. So favorite movie involving apes, Robert?
Oh, that was a tough one. I love me some apes. The original King Kong is fantastic, of course, but
right.
I'm just going to throw out there pretty much every Tarzan movie ever that has an ape or a gorilla in it. It works for me. I love the Tarzan flicks, and there's almost always a monkey somewhere, or a chimp, or a primate. So I can't pick a one because they're kind of ubiquitous. But those are them.
All right. I'm kind of along the same lines. I actually chose Disney's animated Tarzan because I love that movie, and I love those gorillas in that one. My second choice was going to be Gorillas in the Mist with Sigourney Weaver, but either way, Disney's Tarzan. I love it. Mike?
I'm going to throw a nice one out here. I love the Jungle Book with the village of the apes and stuff like that when they come in.
King Louie, yeah. By the way, I forgot him.
Yes. And again, another great movie. I mean, animation, and it's Disney and all this other stuff. But I love the little apes that was in that one.
Right,
King Louie was the best. Yeah.
Yeah, not quite a bad guy, but not quite nice either.
Right.
All right. Favorite time travel movie, Robert?
I have a 2-part answer for this one too. It's tough. I love time travel, although I always yell because there's always paradoxes that make me angry. But for straight up movie, I really like Time After Time.
Yes, I'm glad you put this because I almost had it as my choice. That's a great choice.
H.G. Wells and Jack the Ripper in San Francisco, and what a cast! I mean, Mary Steenburgen and Malcolm McDowell and the amazing David Warner.
Yes.
Such a great movie. I love that movie. My favorite time travel kind of storyline is from TV, and I love all of the River Song episodes of Doctor Who. And she's only a recurring character. The Alex Kingston is fantastic as River Song, and the gist of it for people who don't know. So Doctor Who travels through time forward, and for reasons never really explained right. River Song is going through time backwards. So she and Doctor Who have met many, many, many times, but he doesn't know it and she does. And so it makes for this wonderful, wonderful story where she pops up from random episodes, but it explores time travel really well, and she's a fantastic actress, and it actually becomes very poignant because like what ends up being what he thinks is the first time they meet, she knows it's actually going to be the last time she's ever going to see him because they're
Gotcha.
and it uses time travel. I don't know, she's probably in a dozen, 20, 15 I don't know, episodes across like 4 seasons, but they're always highlights, and it's such a great way to explore time travel and all its crazy and frustrating facets.
Love it. All right, Mike.
Here's kind of one, just because I'm a Christopher Reeves fan, was Somewhere in Time.
Oh, very good choice. All right.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because there's no science behind it. There's no vehicles transporting him. It's just him believing. And one of the things I liked about the movie is, he had to go and get time period correct stuff when he was going back. And then when he pulls out some change out of his pocket, there's a date on one of the coins and he flashes back to the future, and it's like I like that part because it's like, the things in the past can't accept the things from the future. And as a person who, not a believer of time travel, I just like the fact that it shut the door on that theory, if you ask me.
All right. Fantastic. So Back to the Future felt like low-hanging fruit. I didn't want to pick it, even though I do love that movie. So I went with a kind of a darker time travel movie. I went with 12 Monkeys.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
So because
I'm staying within the monkey theme.
Yeah, right. completely not intentional, but I'll take that as the coincidence. But no, I love that movie. It's I love the world that was created, and it's just even now it's just such a great film. And 12 Monkeys is. I started looking at because I started going through my movies and going, oh yes, that's the one. We're picking that one because
that is a great pick. Yeah.
Well, because part of me was like, I wanted to cheat and say, Avengers Endgame, but that's just too. It was great, but I'm like, nah, 12 Monkeys. That's dark and creepy, and
Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis. I mean,
and Madeline Stowe, directed by Terry Gilliam. Yes, I love that movie.
Yeah.
I got a nice steelbook copy from Arrow Video sitting on my shelf.
Very cool.
Okay, so earlier on we did mention all the original sequels from the 70s. Thumbs up, thumbs down overall on those sequels. What do you guys think, Robert?
I liked them all the first time.
That's kind of where I'm sitting too.
Even though with diminishing returns as they went on and on and on. To be fair, I will watch the original every 3 or 4 years, and I have never watched. Well, I tried watching the first sequel, and gave up because they just were so much poorly executed. They didn't have a lot of ideas in the same way this film did. Yes, once, but once is enough.
All right. How about you, Mike?
As a child watching them, they were cool, but this test of time, they do not stand up. It's like watching Dukes of Hazzard reruns now. You're like, oh my God, I thought this was great television. That's kind of the same response. I was like, oh my God, I thought this was great cinema. They just don't stand up. The first one does, and they consecutively get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
And their budgets went down too. They wanted a higher return on investment, and they just kept cutting them. That's why you got rubber masks instead of latex prosthetics. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. They could have took this franchise and went somewhere with it that could have been great. This franchise could rival Star Wars if it was done appropriately.
Yeah.
The one thing about one of the sequels, I want to say it was the second one where the humans are hiding underground and they worship the nuclear missile.
Second one.
Yeah, it was the second one. That was not groundbreaking, but at least it was kind of genuine, and it went off on its social statements and stuff like that as well too. But Yeah, they could have the second one. They could have branched a little bit further, but they didn't. They just got lazy with it.
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah. All right. So now I did mention the 2001 Tim Burton remake, which I will honestly say it looked really good, and it was okay. It just didn't feel like maybe it wasn't Tim Burton wasn't the right way to go with it. Thoughts, guys? I mean, have you guys seen all the remakes and everything else? Because I have.
I only saw the first one,
The Tim
the first
Burtons?
reboot one. Yeah, I saw the TV show episodes of it back in the day and the animated and all that. But yeah, when they brought it back with Burton, I went to the theater. I was skeptical because I'm not a big fan of his. And while it was on, I didn't hate it. And I didn't feel betrayed. But I didn't feel like it was. I didn't feel like it was a money grab.
Right.
But like an hour later, I forgot what I'd seen. It didn't resonate with me. I didn't want to like tell my friend to go see it. I was like, that was competent. That was not horrible. Like, good job. 2 hours well spent. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
But and I did not bother to see the sequel, or I don't know, there have been one or two after that one.
Actually, no, they rebooted it again, and with the three, there was Rise, and then Dawn of, and then Battle, and those three are fantastic. The ones from 2011
those aren't
on.
Burton's, those are something else.
Completely different. Yeah,
never saw. I thought his had a sequel of some.
No,
sort
it just had the one. It just had the one.
Well, whatever. Well, I've only seen his, so maybe I'll give the other ones a try.
No, I have them all. Of course I do. I will say, if you're going to spend some time, watch those because they give us Caesar is a test subject, and that's how the whole thing starts. And Andy Serkis as Caesar is freaking fantastic. The CG, the apes, everything. There's so many good performances in these three movies from everybody. It's so good. It's as much as I love the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, and they did everything right. I kind of feel the same way about this. They took the subject matter and said, we're going to give these characters stories and a different take. It's not nuclear war that triggers it. It's man's need for science to try to solve a problem. And initially it's a good idea. They're trying to solve, but they treat the animals poorly, and then, kind of goes crazy. So have you seen the sequels, Mike?
I have, and I kind of go with Robert. I don't remember them.
Okay. Well, all
right. I do, now that you brought it up, I liked what you're talking about as far as like it was a different twist. Caesar was, modified or became more intelligent, and it spun a different direction, stuff like that. And I think I'm glad it went that way, but man, I really forgot I watched it.
Like I said, the Tim Burton one looked really good, but it was just the same movie. You know what I mean? As the first one. These, I kind of feel the three that they have now with the new one called Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more, their themes are better. The characters are more rich, and these are way more interesting. And you got some great performances. Like I said, James Franco's in the first one, and you got Woody Harrelson in a later one. And it's just, of course, you have the evil humans that are at war with the apes, and just the way the detail to the areas that the apes live versus where the humans. They did such a great job in creating and the world building that they did not do enough in the first one. They do that in these. So,
nice.
They're definitely worth checking out. I highly recommend them. Any final thoughts on the original Planet of the Apes? And we'll go ahead and give it a rating as well. So, Robert, final thoughts and rating out of 1 to 5 film reels. What do you say?
Well, I've said plenty, so I'll just go right to my rating.
That's fine.
I think that if you've never seen it before, it is a cultural reference point, as Dayton said. It's fantastic. So if you've never seen it, 4 reels. If you've seen it, it's still a 3-reel film.
Okay. All right, Mike.
I'm going to stay on with that. I think I might bump it up to a 4.5 reel if you've never seen it before. Because, man, other than just some like the spaceship scene, it compared to what we understand of technology, it's corny now, but it wasn't corny then, obviously.
Right.
But the social commentary this movie has still relevant. So I think it's still a pertinent movie to watch. It's a good way to spend the time to watch it. Even though it does, like Robert said, start off kind of slow with them wandering through the desert and all this other stuff, and no dialogue and all this other stuff. The movie is really it kept me motivated to watch it. I had no problem sitting and enjoying it. So yeah, that's 3 and then a 4.5.
So and with no Heston, would it have been a full 5?
If we could have pulled somebody else in, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Get rid of Heston and maybe a 5.
Yes. See, because my thing is, as we mentioned, the social commentary is still very important, still very relevant. The twist ending is still great. The creativity of the story and the idea. So it all is really very good. And like I said, it's still relevant. And for the most part, it still holds up. I'd say 4 film reels. Had maybe they gotten a better lead actor, I say, 4.5. I don't know because I'm very hesitant to give any movies a perfect score. So I have a few, but I think I would have liked to have seen somebody else in that Heston role, just a stronger actor. But, maybe it was hard to find somebody because it was kind of, I know it took a while to get it made and, but I don't know. Anyway,
he was the bankable name,
But see, there's other ones. I mean,
I agree.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, maybe even, that time Clint Eastwood could have been a viable option, or like I said, there was I don't know. There were options, but I don't know.
Now I'm curious. I kind of want to dig a little deeper later and see, was Heston associated with the studio? Did he know that? Because Jacobs, the producer, was an agent before and had a lot of stars in his stable. I mean, was it like a favor to the producer? Was he on hire to 20th Century Fox? I'm just curious who, maybe there was a story why he got it, because it doesn't really fit with the whole Moses and Ben-Hur and all this, and then all of a sudden,
All right. So fun discussion, gentlemen. I was so happy that there was lots to say about this movie. It's been a while since I've watched it. I tried to pick up a used copy at Half Price Books. I saw it. It was a anniversary edition. I got all excited. It was a 2-disc set. I pick it up and it was full screen. I was like, I'm not buying this. Are you kidding me? I was not. I'm not buying a full screen copy of anything if I don't have to. So I'm still looking for a good copy to pick up. So anyway, but as always, thank you so much, Mike, for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert.
Oh, thank you for putting up with me.
It's always a pleasure, Robert. Come on now. I'd like to take a minute to thank the listeners for stopping by and listening to what we have to say. As I've said before, I know people have a busy schedule and lots of things going on, so it does mean quite a bit that you take time out of your day to spend it with us. So thank you very much. All of our social media information is in the show notes. Reach out and let us know what you think about Planet of the Apes, the original sequels, and anything, the 2001 Burton, and now the current sequels. Chat with us on Discord. We do have a Discord now. Join us and chat with us about upcoming episodes, any things you are watching, listening to, things like that. Join us over on Patreon and help support the podcast. On Patreon, our members get early access to episodes, exclusive content, as well as behind-the-scenes video takes on the episodes as well. If you cannot afford the $1 to $5 a month, support us by sharing us on social media, sharing us with your family and friends, and give us that 5-star rating. 5-star ratings get us seen by more people. So more people, more better. I do want to mention an upcoming episode next week. Our friends from the All 80s Movies podcast, Bill and Jason, will be joining us once again. And we are discussing Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the third kind. Do yourself a favor and watch more movies. And remember, physical media is better than streaming. The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson, recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.